If you can't hit a mark, you're not acting. If you can't learn fight choreography and act while doing it, you can't act. Like, it's that simple. I don't think any of this is usable. I'm so fucking pissed off about it.
This video is sponsored by CuriosityStream. Get access to my streaming video service Nebula when you sign up for CuriosityStream using the link in the description.
Hi, it's me, Laura, from the future. I recorded a Q&A a while back, and I got one question where I had so much to say that there was really no way to edit it down into something that would fit as a piece of a Q&A, and watching it back, I felt like I had actually even more to say than I thought I did. So I figured I would just go ahead and just make a whole video addressing this question. I don't know why I'm dancing around it. You've seen the title of the video. You know what it is. Let's get into it. Alright, Jared, 40 feet to the west, asks, method acting, horse shit or the shit? Alright. Settle in, fuckers, because I got this fucking degree. And so we're gonna use it for a second to just talk about the phrase method acting in the way that it's used colloquially, which I think, my understanding of sort of the way that phrase gets used in conversations is that we're talking about this idea of like actors who like to stay in character all the time and do whatever kinds of things. So like on one end you've got like Daniel Day-Lewis insisting that he be listed on the call sheet as Abraham Lincoln playing Abraham Lincoln, and like everyone has to call him Abraham Lincoln the whole time he's on set, and he just like is Abraham Lincoln even when the cameras aren't rolling. And then you've got things like Jared Leto mailing used condoms and dead animals to his co-stars because he's playing the Joker, baby, and he's crazy and he's being real crazy, yeah. So there's this idea that this, like, both the phrase method and this way of behaving comes from Stanislavski, who was probably like the single most influential writer and teacher and thinker in the way that we teach and do acting at all here in the now, and that is not true. Like, none of this comes from Stanislavski. So Stanislavski did call what he taught his system. It's much more just kind of like what you would literally think here in the year 2020 acting even is. So Stanislavski is saying, like, you're not gonna go out on stage and just like present the emotions and like demonstrate what your character's going through. The way that you do this is not by like choreographing your movements or perfectly deciding the exact best line delivery that'll sound cool and make you seem like a super cool and impressive performer and person. Your responsibility and your job as an actor is to really honestly show a person, like a real person, who is really honestly going through something. So the way that Stanislavski does this is by focusing on things like, what does your character want, your objective, and what is your character doing to the other people in the room to get what they want. So like my objective, the easiest one to always come up with is like, my objective is like to kiss this person. That's what I want. I want them to kiss me. And so like, what am I doing to get them to do that? Like, I'm flattering them. I am seducing them. I am charming them. And so then you take the dialogue that you have and the scene that you're working on, and you take these actions and you actually do them. So that's what Stanislavski is like, when you're on stage, you are actually doing the things that this character is actually doing to get what they actually want. You're not performing or demonstrating or showing, you're actually doing it. And so there's like some sense memory work in there, like, if your character's coming in from outside and it's cold outside, then you want to recall, like, what is it actually like to be outside in the cold? What does that feel like? What does it look like? So that you can kind of, you will respond in the way that a person who has actually been out in the snow. But like, Stanislavski doesn't care what you're doing backstage. Stanislavski doesn't care what you're doing when the cameras aren't rolling, and the prep Stanislavski is suggesting for you to do is not for you to, like, be an asshole to your co-stars, because that's what your character would do. Then you've got the complicated stuff of, like, the two main schools that brought Stanislavski's teaching to the US, right? You've got Stella Adler, who says you do this by using your imagination to connect to the given circumstances that your character is in and imagine what it would be like to be that person. And then you've got Lee Strasberg, who says you focus on your own experiences and you draw on what you've been through that would make you the person and has made you the person feel like and act like this character. But again, none of these people care what you're doing when the cameras stop rolling. There's maybe like some exercises to help you prepare right before you start, but nobody cares whether you're backstage playing Uno with your co-stars or whether you're like stalking around the room acting like whatever you think this character is. No, none of them care what other people call you on set. That comes, I would suggest, much more from like film directors of maybe like the 50s through the 70s, where you get things like Friedlander slapping people so that they'll be like emotional and crying before they do this scene. I meant Friedkin. That's embarrassing. If you don't know, that's in reference to William Friedkin, who directed The Exorcist and famously slapped one of his actors as a way of getting the performance that he wanted out of him. Or like handcuffing your two co-stars who hate each other together and refusing to take the handcuffs off when the cameras stop rolling because you want them to give this performance of like convincingly hating each other. So I'm gonna be honest, I didn't actually know what movie or director I was referring to here. I was just parroting something that I had heard Alex Goldman say in the Exorcist episode of the Untitled Reply All spin-off, colloquially known as Scaredy Cats, which I was listening to as research for the horror movie episode I did. I have Googled it now, and I think he was talking about Alfred Hitchcock doing the 39 Steps, and that may or may not be a really accurate depiction of what happened. So this is why I don't usually film without a script, but I will still submit as evidence of my actual original point that in an interview with Friedkin where he talks about the slap incident, he cites like that all of these other directors have done that.
I had read that other great directors had done that. John Ford, George Stevens had done that. Whack. Yeah.
As like justification for it being a totally fine thing to do. That stuff is not like, it doesn't really come from writings of people who are trying to make people better actors. It comes from directors who are trying to get a specific performance out of somebody in the moment. And I kind of think that like it's when you fuse the two of those together that you get what we sort of colloquially call method acting in the year 2020. Like I remember like reading An Actor Prepares and being surprised that like there was nothing in there about like how you can never ever drop character. So I think that's just, we should be, it's not that it's less valid or anything, it's just that I think we should be honest and know where it's coming from, and if there's any kind of like gravitas that's being lent to the phrase method acting because people think that it's like this impressive thing that comes from like teachings, it really is not. Like it kind of just comes from actors doing it because it works for them. So, with all of that out of the way, acting is weird and complicated, and I kind of feel like anything that works for you works for you. So like for me personally, this method acting is not for me. Like I definitely, when I was in high school, I did some version of it, but like that was because I didn't know how to act and because I had a massive chip on my shoulder about needing to prove that like I was not just in the drama club because it was a fun thing to do. I was there because I was an actress. And so it felt like it really just helped me take myself seriously and feel like, yes, I'm an actress. And it did lead to like, sometimes I would have these incredible experiences on stage. Like I did a production of Sweeney Todd where I had the swine flu. And just like the way that interacted with like this like very like being in character way that I was feeling was like, it was this profound experience. But like, was it good? Did it make my performance better? No. Like, it made me have this particular experience on stage, and it made me feel like I could take myself seriously, and it was like fun, but it didn't actually make me better at acting. But like for other people, like clearly whatever Daniel Day-Lewis is doing is working for him, and like this is the other element, right? Is like, it feels like asking people who are on set to call you by your character name, like that's a pretty small concession. And just like walking around and like being in the physical body and like whatever voice you're doing and whatever kind of headspace you feel like you need to just like not drop that, to kind of put it on the once. Like that just kind of seems like, sure, why not? Like it's not the thing that works the best for me as an actress, but clearly it's working for Daniel Day-Lewis. It doesn't seem like he's making anyone's life miserable. Like it seems like pretty reasonable accommodations to ask for from your team and from your crew. So it has been brought to my attention that this is maybe not entirely true, and Daniel Day-Lewis has maybe like really freaked some people out on set. I had a hard time finding any information about that, but like that doesn't necessarily mean anything, and like absolutely that would be par for the course in Hollywood if this actor who's just like held up as the greatest fucking actor of the century and has all of the Oscars is actually a complete nightmare to work with, and everybody knows it, and he just continues to work and get all of the Oscars because he's an artiste. Like that would track, absolutely. So I'm not here to say that it's not true. I'm definitely not here to like uncancel Daniel Day-Lewis if he's worthy of being canceled. I don't really care one way or the other about Daniel Day-Lewis, the actor, frankly, when you're talking about method actors kind of like off the dome. Without a script, he's gonna be the first one who comes to mind. And I have actually literally seen the call sheet that said Abraham Lincoln playing Abraham Lincoln, because that's the kind of shit you get when you pay way too much money for a theater degree. So without saying that this is necessarily the case with Daniel Day-Lewis, I do think something that's important to mention is that like acting is a job, like any other job. And so like any other job, you're gonna have the occasional kind of just like set of coworkers who just don't work great together, or just don't like working with one another, or one of them loves the other one and the other one can't stand working with the other one. You're gonna have those people who are the equivalent of like that guy from that other department who keeps going in to edit your spreadsheet, and every time he does it, he organizes it by date when you want it organized by alphabetical, and like he never changes it back, and it just makes you want to pull your hair out. That kind of stuff is just gonna happen, and it's not necessarily anyone's fault. Like, it's not a matter of one person or the other being wrong or being right or being shitty or being an asshole. Like, it's just a matter of like, you do any job, there are going to be people who you don't enjoy working with, and that's just kind of par for the course. Stuff that's on that level is not necessarily like method acting bad. It just might be like not something that you want on your set if you're able to control it. Just the way that like, you know, any kind of group of coworkers, there's gonna be probably someone on the team who you're like, man, I don't want to work with Bob on this project. I'd much rather work with Sophie, but like, I'm a professional and I can grit my teeth and hang out and do this one project with Bob if that's what we really need, because he's got the right expertise for it. I don't think we have a problem of making not enough excuses for bad behavior on the part of actors, especially actors who are considered to be like great actors. But I do think that's kind of an important piece of this puzzle. But when you get into shit like like Jared Leto mailing his co-stars dead animals, it's like, now you're infringing on other people and you're making a hostile work environment, and you're just being a dick to people in the name of it being like super real. And like, that's shitty on its own. Like, it's already bad. And like, I think the fact that it's shitty to other people and it's making a bad time for other people on the set is like enough. But then there's also the fact that like, it's not good. Like, I think if you went to any person I went to college with, like during our freshman year, and said, give me a performance of, like, if Heath Ledger's Joker, but instead of being, like, kind of a mobster, he's, like, a super edgy, cool, Hot Topic gangster. Like, I think anyone I went to college with 6 months into school could give you what Jared Leto gave you without mailing used condoms to people. Like, it's on top of it being bad already, it's not doing anything for him. All right, a few more things I want to add to this. One thing that I think is really important is that we've kind of landed in this space where, like, oh, this actor was so committed to the role that they did X, Y, and Z crazy thing, is like, that's a story that sells really well. Like, it's a very clickable story. People are gonna click on that headline, and it's also, like, a very bankable story. Like, it's a story that presumably sells a lot of movie tickets. So I can tend to sometimes be, like, a little skeptical of just, like, anything that there's, like, a million articles about the way that someone was so committed to this role. Assuming that this is accurate, that it actually happened, like, was this actually happening because this actor, like, felt that that was an important piece of their process, or, like, was it something that they did because it was, like, a publicity stunt? Which, I mean, like, that's part of the job. So maybe that's also, like, part of the conversation, is, like, recognizing that, you know, like, that's sort of where we're at with the film business right now, is, like, selling tickets is part of everybody's job. And so, you know, it's not just always about, like, what's gonna look great and give the best performance. It's also about, like, what is gonna be a story that people are gonna be interested in as kind of, like, the meta narrative around this movie. You know, back to the highest freaking high fall for Assassin's Creed that was, like, completely not necessary from any kind of artistic standpoint, but it was a great publicity stunt. It absolutely sold a lot of tickets. But then there's also the side of, like, I genuinely, like, sometimes I do wonder, like, how truthful some of these stories are, depending on the source reporting them. How many times have we seen, like, headlines where it's like, this actor did all their own stunts, and, like, they did not. They absolutely did not. Objectively, they did not. Like, maybe Tom Cruise, but even there, like, I have questions. Realistically, they did a couple of stunts, and their double did the rest of them. Probably what they said in that interview was, like, I did my own stunts, which is objectively true, and then depending on, you know, the clickbait machine, it turns into Brie Larson did all her own stunts. I hate picking on Brie Larson about this because it's everybody. The point being, like, this actor is so method that they did X, Y, and Z is, like, a story that we like. And so I have questions both about the motivations behind doing it and also about, like, the reality of what's getting reported. And then another thing that I kind of just alluded to in the original answer but didn't really get into too much is, what about when this is coming from the director? When it's not happening because the actor is coming in like, this is the best way for me to work, this is the way that I feel comfortable and the way that I do good work. So, you know, Friedkin slapping people and all of the directors he apparently cited who have ever slapped people, and Hitchcock handcuffing his actors together so they could build chemistry, and, you know, even more recently, David Ayer telling Cara Delevingne to just go out in a field at moonlight and strip naked and dance around, and then she'll know who this character is. The first thing is I do want to acknowledge that, especially because I come from a very theater-centric background, that, like, film is a whole animal. Sometimes you just have to do whatever it takes to get the shot that you need. You know, I've been picking on Friedkin pretty hard, but, like, that was a situation where he was working with someone who wasn't an actor, so probably didn't have a lot of experience knowing how to take direction.
He was not an actor. He was a priest. And it was 4 o'clock in the morning and we were freezing.
They were on like however many takes and it just wasn't, they just weren't getting what they needed.
And we did about 25, 30 takes and he wasn't getting it.
So that particular slap, at least to hear him tell it, was like, it was a last resort kind of situation.
I first asked, I took him by the shoulders and I asked him if he loved me and if he trusted me. And he said, "You know I do, Bill." I said, "Okay," and I told the cameras to get ready, and I hit him as hard as I could across the face.
And, you know, like, on that level, like, I get it. Time is absolutely money on a film set, and, like, you don't have months of rehearsal, probably, to, you know, figure out a shared language between the director and the actor and make sure that you all know and kind of like have developed what it is that you want. It can be like you just met today, and if you don't get this shot in the next 5 minutes, the movie's not getting made. And in that kind of situation, you know, like, I get it. I don't love it objectively, but like, I understand what we're dealing with in those kinds of situations. The problem is that like, when that kind of stuff happens, like, that's not a director directing the actor. So like the main difference between, like from an actor's perspective, the main difference between working, like taking an acting class versus working with a director is that a teacher in an acting class is gonna say, here's the technique, here's what I want you to do, like here's how you utilize these tools, here are the tools, use them right now. And then at the end of, you know, the course or whatever, you as the actor kind of go away and you're like, that worked for me, or that didn't work for me, or it sort of worked for me, but I need to tweak it a little bit, or like that might be the right thing for me under certain circumstances, I'm not sure. The reason you do all of that is so that then when you work with a director and they tell you what they need to see, not what you need to do, but what they need to see, you have then this toolbox that you can pull from so you can give them what they need and understand what that is and know for you what the best way is to get there. So let's say like you're on a set and you're filming like a breakup scene, right? So there, and this take has just gone. So like a good respectful moment of direction is going to be the director going to the actor and saying like, hey, okay, I really saw in that take, like, how angry you were. And that's great, but I want to try one where we can also see how sad this is for you. And so then it's up to the actor to then know, like, okay, that makes sense to me. How do I bring that out in myself? So like, are they going to then, you know, make some adjustment to their breathing and their eye line and the vocal register they're using so it sounds like they're just holding back tears? Are they going to dig into like the fictional backstory that they've created and pull up like a more pleasant memory of this other character so that this is more bittersweet? Are they going to, like, go stare at their co-star who they genuinely love working with and, like, secretly pick out, like, 3 things that they're really attracted to about them so that, like, the idea of leaving them behind is more sad? Or, like, are they gonna go pull out their phone and look at a picture of their cat who just died so that, like, they feel really sad? You know, there's many different ways to get that effect of, like, do it but more sad, as there are actors. And like a good actor is gonna know, they're gonna understand that note and they're gonna know for themselves the best way to do it. So, and like a good director who's good at directing actors and like is working with a cast that they trust and is good at trusting like any of the people they work with is gonna know that like they're gonna get a better result by going to that actor and saying, I saw your anger, but I also need to see your sadness, than they are by like going to the actor and lying and being like, hi, I just got a call and I found out your mom died, but like we need to keep rolling. At that point, what you have is a director who's trying to do the actor's job for them, and they're not gonna do it as well as the actor can do it. Like, that's why you hire an actor, is because they can do that better than you can. Or at least that's how it should work. So for me, when you hear stuff like, something that really got to me was hearing about David Fincher on the set of The Social Network, just running like take after take after take after take after take, so that, by take fucking 99, the actors are able to just own this capital L language from Aaron Sorkin and make it sound really conversational in a way that they couldn't on the first take or whatever. Like, that to me, that's not genius directing. That's a director who doesn't trust the actors. That's a director who assumes that the actors he's working with don't understand the note, I need you to make it sound really conversational. Like, that's an easy fucking note to take. To see that kind of stuff done as like the starting point and not as the last resort, to me signals that you're looking at a director who generously doesn't trust these particular actors, but more likely just literally doesn't know how to direct actors. And that's a sign that you're bad at your job. That's not a sign that someone is a great fucking artist, and it's really gross to me that that can be the way that gets talked about. So then another piece here that I do think is important in this particular conversation is that, like, sometimes there are things that are done on set that make the actors' lives difficult, but like for actual legitimate artistic reasons. So I don't mean legitimate artistic reasons like Kubrick making Shelley Duvall do 6 billion fucking takes on the set of The Shining because completely emotionally and mentally breaking her was the only way he knew how to get the performance he wanted out of her. I don't like Kubrick very much. You can take my film Twitter card, it's fine. What I mean here is, like, okay, so I've been picking on Suicide Squad a lot in this video, and a lot of the reason is because I remember reading this think piece back when, like, before that movie came out, that just, like, really got to me, that was about it was about Suicide Squad and The Revenant, and, like, talking about them as if they were similar or the same thing, because all of the conversation around both of them was, like, how difficult it was for the actors. And, like, this isn't actually blaming that think piece, because it was going after a thesis that I think is still pretty relevant, which is that, like, a lot of kind of discourse, particularly when there's, like, awards buzz, is, like, we want to talk way more about, like, how much an actor suffered and how difficult it was for them than their actual performance. I think that's a very good point. So this wasn't actually necessarily a problem with the thesis of the piece, but the comparison of Jared Leto just being an asshole because he decided it was, like, artistically necessary for him, versus Leonardo DiCaprio having to, like, crawl inside of, I don't even remember what dead animal it was. It's like, those are two completely different things. The reason why The Revenant was difficult to make was because there were artistic choices made, that they were going for particular looks and stuff. You know, these really long shots in the natural light at a time of year and in a place in the world where, like, it's not light for very long. And so, like, those are legitimate artistic choices. Like, you can make the decision for yourself about, like, whether they work or, like, whether they're good artistic choices, but they are, like, those are choices that are made for actual aesthetic, artistic reasons. And your job as an actor is to be able to just bring yourself to the table and bring your performance to the table under whatever circumstances. So, like, I don't think your job as an actor is just to, like, sit there and take abuse because someone decided that the abuse itself was artistic, but, like, you do have to do difficult shit. I think a better comparison, actually, you know, if you wanted to go within the same movie, Suicide Squad, Margot Robbie had to learn to hold her breath for 5 minutes, and it's like wild to listen to her talk about it, where she's just like, oh yeah, it's not that hard, you just like go into convulsions after a while and you just learn not to be bothered by it.
So once you know all that, when you're like underwater and you're, 3.5 minutes or something and you start having convulsions, you're like, I'm good, I'm gonna ride this out for another minute. Like, it's just nice to know.
Because she's a fucking pro, and she's just like, oh yeah, I get it. Like, we need a shot of me underwater, so I'm gonna have to hold my breath for 5 minutes. And like, that's just, like, that's part of the job, is just being able to roll with that kind of stuff. Like, roll with what you need to get the shot, roll with what you need to tell the story, roll with what you need to create the proper aesthetic, which is not always gonna be the most easy or comfortable stuff. And that is completely different from making everyone else's life difficult because you're declaring that it's part of your process. Or even, not even necessarily making everyone else's life difficult, like just doing something difficult because it's part of your process. Like, bringing it back around to our boy Dan, like learning an entire language because that helps you get into the headspace of the character, or do the accent that you need to do more accurately and convincingly or naturally or whatever it is. Like, if that's part of your process, that's fine, but like, that's also totally different from needing to learn to hold your breath for 5 minutes because we can't get the shot unless you do that. Like, you could get the shot without learning Czech. You can make the choice for yourself of whether or not you need to learn Czech. You can't make the choice for yourself of whether or not you need to learn to hold your breath for 5 minutes. I mean, I guess you could if you just feel like drowning. And yeah, I do think it's really telling that, when we talk about Suicide Squad, like, you hear so much about fucking Jared Leto and those used condoms and dead mice and whatever, but like, I had to just find out for myself from watching Hot Ones that Margot Robbie actually learned to hold her breath for 5 minutes. There's definitely something to be said about like who gets to be an artiste in that situation. And this is why it can be so frustrating sometimes to hear conversations about certain actors being held up as being like really committed or really method or whatever when they're doing shit like Joaquin Phoenix insisting on improvising his fights in The Joker because he needs to just be in the moment. To be clear, not a thing. Like, there's never a day in your stunt training where it's like, all right, now we learn to improv. Like, it's not a thing. There's always fight choreography because it is really unsafe to just improv that stuff. Your job as an actor, like, being able to hit marks is your job. Being able to learn fights and act the fight that you have learned is your job. And like saying like, no, I'm not gonna do that is just straight up saying that you're not gonna do your job. And like, sure, fine, whatever, Todd Phillips decided that like, that was how they were gonna do that and like, that's what he wanted or whatever. So like, that's how that movie got made, sure, but that's not evidence of someone being a good actor. That's evidence of someone being allowed to not do all of their job. I don't even know if Joaquin Phoenix is like someone who gets thought of as like method. This just really pissed me off. All right, so I think we're ready to tie it all together. I think it is important that any conversation about method acting acknowledges it as just kind of one technique that is no inherently better or worse or more committed than any other. So, imagining a fantasy world where that were the reality of the discourse, I would say that for me, method acting is good when it is done safely and respectfully by an actor who has chosen it for themselves because it will result in the best performance they can give. That's my final answer. Hey, did you know that Stella Adler and Lee Strasberg, the acting teachers who I mentioned earlier in this video, had legendary beef? I talk more about that, including which side of the debate I personally am on, in the extended edition of this video available on Nebula. Nebula is a creator-owned streaming service where you can find the entire libraries of some of my personal favorites like Jill Barrett, Maggie Mae Fish, Sarah Zed, Princess Weeks, 12-Tone, Jacob Geller, and now me, including extended editions of videos you may already love and some original content that might not be really well suited to YouTube, like spicy takes about 20th century acting technique. Best of all, the folks over at Curiosity Stream like what Nebula is doing so much that they've set us up with a bundle. Curiosity Stream is a subscription-based streaming service with thousands of documentaries and nonfiction titles, including one that I really enjoyed recently called My Comic Shop Country, which is a look at the current state of the comics industry through the lens of the business and community around comic book shops all over the US. So many superheroes and no one's sending anyone dead rats. It's great. You can watch that doc and thousands more, plus everything on Nebula, and support this channel when you sign up for Curiosity Stream using my link in the description. And for a limited time, that link will also get you 26% off for an annual total of $14.79. That's a full year of Curiosity Stream and Nebula for less than $1.25 a month. And that's not a trial offer either. You get both services for as long as you keep your membership. Whoa. Like, I know I'm in ad read mode right now, but that's genuinely a bonkers good deal.
Thank you so much to my patrons, with an extra special thank you to Andreas Evans, Ben Demery, Danny, Exceedingly Lizzie, Ilona Concetta, Kaya, LL Milktray, Michelle, Richard Lawson, and Ronnie Rocket. If you'd like to help support these videos directly, you can become a patron at patreon.com/Laura Crone, or you can throw me a one-time tip on PayPal or Ko-fi.